J. Christian Adams, Public Interest Legal Foundation. Thanks for coming on again and talking with us about what the president plans to do with an executive order in an attempt to outlaw mail-in balloting for federal elections. What's your first reaction to this? And you must be just doing cartwheels.
Well, look, mail balloting is the most vulnerable part of our system. It's a bad idea. It puts the post office in charge of deciding who's got power in the country. There's nothing good about it. And so I'm glad that more people are talking about it, including the president. He understands apparently that it's a bad idea. He cited our work in the past. I'm glad that he is still focused. And states should not be using mail ballots. Nevada might be the worst. California's bad. Oregon's bad. Michigan's bad. So I'm thrilled that it's getting more attention.
Well, I mean, this is almost the left's holy grail, mail-in balloting. How much do they rely on this balloting to emerge in the win column time after time?
Well, they did for a while. I think the tide has turned as far as who benefits from it, frankly, but that doesn't remove the fact that it is a vulnerability in the system. Whether Republicans or Democrats are benefiting doesn't matter. What matters is that it allows breakdown. It allows other people to vote other people's ballots. It allows ballots to stack up in Nevada apartment complexes where the voters no longer live. So the fact is that it is a terrible vulnerability in our election system. So I'm extraordinarily glad that it's getting the attention it deserves.
Yeah. One of the things that I remember very well, because I'm old enough to know, because I'm the adult in the room, is that when mail-in balloting started, all of a sudden, Republicans ceased winning statewide elections in Oregon and Washington since then, and in California.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good observation. It's hard to know if it's causality or correlation. In the place that are really, I keep going back to Nevada, that it really has an impact on the political culture is, remember, Nevada has automatic vote by mail. It's not just mail balloting. It's like, it's always going to be, it's automatic mail balloting. It's not you call and request, it's you automatically get. And when you combine that, Victoria, with dirty voter rolls, you get a disaster like you have in Nevada. You can watch our video at publicinterestlegal.org where we go to the casinos and strip clubs and liquor stores looking for the registered voter who's supposed to be living there and doesn't. Well, okay, that's right. One thing. But when you automatically send a ballot to Harry's Liquor Barn, it creates a real problem.
Well, and I watched and shared your videos about that. They were hilarious, and they would be laugh out loud funny for many people, except they're deadly serious because those bars and casinos are getting ballots. And presumably some people are voting those ballots.
Yeah, it's a real problem because the dirty voter rolls make the mail balloting system a toxic explosion, where you have this terrible situation of vulnerabilities cranked into the system. And I'm quite confident, by the way, that Adam Laxalt would be in the U.S. Senate if it weren't for mail ballots. There would be one fewer Democrat senator. So maybe there's the example where the mail balloting had a direct impact on the outcome.
Oh, interesting. 709,000 voters in the state of Washington are only connected to the voter rolls through a license, driver's license, which is given out to anybody. And so what Glenn Morgan over at We the Govern has been trying to do is to get a basis of comparison. How can he get the DHS information to show who's illegally in the country and or whatever that shows, and compare and contrast them against all these people who are registered to vote and who aren't apparently not qualified. We don't know, but we know one thing: 709,000 of them only have one bit of ID to connect them to the voter rolls. This is a not right, correct? This is just wrong.
Yeah, so what's supposed to happen under federal law, under the Help America Vote Act of 2002, is anytime someone registers to vote, they need to capture a unique numeric identifier. And that could either be part of your social security number or your driver's license number. That's federal law. That passed under in 2002 after the Bush v. Gore fight. So that should provide a basis for Washington or any state to then turn around and utilize a variety of databases to ascertain whether that person's eligible. That's why they passed that law. So the system is set up to not fail. Whether or not Washington is taking advantage of all the particular requirements, I can't answer because I haven't looked at Washington.
Oh, they can't. They used to be able to tell roughly how many illegal aliens were voting because, or not, or on the rolls, because what happened was they were able to look at the jury
Yeah.
excuse forms, and now they've been outlawed from seeing those.
Right. And don't forget, there's something really important here that we learned through hard research. It's not so much illegal aliens getting registered to vote. Okay. And we can prove this with numbers out of North Carolina. We have a report called Motor Voter at 30. It is actually legally here aliens that are the ones getting on the rolls because they're going to get driver's license. They're the ones touching social services. And remember, under Motor Voter, social service agencies are also voter registration agencies. So because they're here legally, they can get welfare. The case is called Plyler v. Doe, U.S. Supreme Court. So anytime these legal aliens touch the government, they get offered voter registration. It generally, Victoria, is the illegal aliens are not touching the federal government. In fact, they're trying to run away from it. So that's why you see most of the foreigners getting registered to vote, like 95 to 98% of them are here legally. It's not the illegal aliens, it's actually the legal aliens.
Okay, so are they supposed to vote? The legal aliens, H-1B visa
No,
holders and that sort of thing?
no. But what's
Okay.
happened is this whole system of touching the government, social services, DMV, take your pick, is where the registration is happening.
Wow, that is extraordinary. How could we ever get a clean voter list from the feds?
A clean voter list. Well, that's a tough one. Some states could just check to see if they are missing data like dates of birth. As I can tell you, California, Michigan, Pennsylvania, they don't even have dates of birth for some of the voter registrants. And so if you don't have the date of birth, you can never do list maintenance, because when that person dies, they won't remove them from the rolls because there's no date of birth to cross match with the death record. Just like you can never remove them if they're duplicates, Victoria. If you don't have the date of birth and you get another John Smith on the registers to vote, you can't cross-check it with the John Smiths you already have because there's no date of birth. But all throughout American voter rolls, there's missing dates. There's missing data. So step one to cleaning the rolls is to fill in all the blanks. Fill in all the blanks.
So it would be, so you couldn't just say you don't have a DOB in there, so you're off the list. You just can't
that's
do
illegal.
That?
You can't do that to somebody. Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
some people might lust over doing that. It feels good, but
right.
you can't look. Sometimes these are government officials making the mistakes. So how could you say to the voter, you're not allowed to vote because the government official knucklehead didn't key in your data? You can't do that.
Yeah, I see. Okay, all right. Well, now what do you make of the? I'm going to pull up the president's EO, really, or yeah, I guess this is the EO. There we go. And here we go. Do you have any problems with what he has sought to do, which is to clean up the voter rolls, make federal elections much more secure? He talks about how he wants to make sure that they're not subject to the whims of the different states, even though states are in charge of elections. How do you circle that square?
Well, look, let's start with the Constitution. The Constitution gave the states the power to run their own elections, and that's a good thing. The founders got it right, because if you centralize power, power grows. That's the one thing we know. The founders are brilliant. They decentralized power. They gave it to the states in the Constitution. So the question becomes, what can be done about dirty voter rolls? Well, I will tell you, I've been litigating this for years, and we have
Mm-hmm.
cases in the Sixth Circuit Court. I don't want to name all the courts because people will start turning off and not listening. But there are some of those cases that address the question of what can be done. And I'm sorry to tell you, not much. The federal courts have ruled that if a state like Michigan, and that's where the big case comes from against Jocelyn Benson, and I testified to Congress about this about 4 weeks ago. The courts have ruled if you have a program, then that's pretty much good enough. If you make an attempt, it's like a participation trophy. The proof is not in the pudding, put another way. If you have a program, then you satisfy federal law. Now, I'm terribly disappointed, I will tell you, Victoria. This case was before the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Department of Justice didn't file a brief in the case. So, and that's just my own personal disappointment because we
Whose
were out on
Department of
our own.
Justice?
Sorry?
Was that the Trump Department of Justice didn't do that? Or was
Yes.
this? Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
That's lame.
And so the court ruled against us and ruled that the proof is not in the pudding. You don't have to have clean voter rolls. You just have to have clean voter rolls. And it's a disaster. And we're going to be trying to seek a cert petition. So maybe people will wake up and say, oh my God, if we want to have clean rolls, we ought to do something about this and join the Public Interest Legal Foundation in seeking Supreme Court review. But we'll see. We're working on that petition now. But the state of the law is not good for requiring clean voter rolls.
So will this EO have any impact on cleaning voter rolls and getting things a little bit more up to
Well,
scratch
sure.
for safe
I'll tell you
elections?
one area where it has a huge impact is, well, I'll tell you two. The first one, to close the loop on the last topic, hopefully somebody will read the EO and say, oh my gosh, we should have filed a brief and we still get another chance. Okay, how about that for low-hanging fruit? But here's the other area where it's tremendous, and that's the SAVE database over at DHS, where the SAVE database is the list of the non-citizens as best the federal government knows it. And so this EO has opened up the SAVE database to states so they can get access to the data as to who's a non-citizen.
What? So, for example, for sure for Washington, maybe it sounds like it would be something they do in California. If you have anything to do with the feds with respect to citizenship and or checking someone's citizenship, it automatically becomes illegal. And so state officials who participate in that could theoretically be prosecuted.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand. They could be prosecuted for
engaging and finding out if a person has citizenship or asking on any level if they have citizenship.
Well, the National Voter Registration Act that governs state registration in 44 states requires state officials to ask about citizenship. It's the law. It's federal law. So whenever there is a voter registration form that's a motor voter form, that's actually in the statute. It says, are you a U.S. citizen, yes or no? And then you sign the form saying, under penalty of perjury, I declare I'm a U.S. citizen. So thankfully, that law is in place and is used for federal voter registration forms in 44 states.
Apparently, in the state of Washington, there's quite a bit of concern about being prosecuted if, in fact, you give out information that would divulge anyone's citizenship.
Well, giving out and asking it are two different things. They don't have any leeway in Washington. They've got to ask it.
All right. Just wanted to try to clarify that anyway. So we've got the ballot harvesting. We've got hoping that is going to be prohibited, but can they do that?
Well, you mean as a federal matter, prohibit ballot harvesting?
Yeah, probably not, huh?
Highly unlikely. There's a lot of problems with it. I mean, they could try, but generally speaking, federal government doesn't issue rules about the collection of ballots in state elections, or, obviously there's federal candidates on the ballot. I'm trying to think of an example where that has happened. I guess there's a law that says you can't beat people up who are trying to vote. So I guess
Hmm.
that's one example under the Section 11B of the Voting Rights Act. But generally speaking, the federal government doesn't sort of, issue any sorts of statutes regarding how ballots can be collected. That sort of falls under the purview of the states.
Mm-hmm. What else can we look for in this new attention to ballot security?
Well, look, I've said that. Look, there's HAVA dollars. Okay, people might say, "What are you talking about, HAVA dollars?" Help America Vote Act. There are pots of money that are sitting around that go to the states to help with their election administration. If I was the federal government, namely through the Election Assistance Commission, the EAC, I'd stop sending money to states that use mail ballots. In fact, they did the opposite in 2020. In order to get states to move to mail, they were sent tens of millions of dollars, right? In 2020, states got truckloads of cash to facilitate the transition to mail ballots. That needs to end. No more money to do mail balloting.
Love that. That would be nice. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see if anybody's got the huevos to do it.
Well,
But that's
look,
a great idea, Christian.
The EAC is tied 2-2, and they have to approve grants to states. There's 2 Republican commissioners who can simply say, no more money for mail balloting. If you have mail ballots, you're not getting money from the Help America Vote Act fund.
I think Congress would go along with the ability to get rid of the mail-in ballots from a federal level.
No, because there's too many Republicans in Congress who respect the state's ability to set their own rules.
Well, but if they do that, I mean, isn't there a way to create a path for federal elections to be in person? I mean, of course, you have a 2-tier election system, but couldn't they insist that there'd be more security for the federal elections?
Well, sort of,
just
yes. But
unworkable?
if we're talking specifically about mail ballots, I don't think there's the votes to impose a federal ban on mail ballots. I don't think it's a close call.
Under the EO, it talks about having security for the federal elections because that's the only thing over which the feds have any say in these every 2 and 4 years. Okay, so congressional elections and presidential elections and that sort of thing. Is there some way that they could? You know all the rules. Is there some way that they could, just bring some pressure to bear to force states into doing in-person voting for those offices?
Well, yes, there is a way, but what I'm trying to emphasize is there's not the political votes to do it. You could say all federal elections must be in person. That will maybe get 25 senators in favor of that. That will maybe get, I don't know, 140, 150, 160 House votes. It will not pass Congress to do that, and it won't even be a close call because Republicans have started using mail ballots. Republicans have started to rely on mail. Yeah, but I'm just saying that the genie is. Look, I'm not advocating one way or another. I'm just counting. Okay, and there is simply no way that will ever pass Congress, at least as we sit here today in this political environment that I'm living in the real world, right?
In the meantime, speaking of elections, there's this huge redistricting issue going on in the United States. California Governor Gavin Newsom says he wants to make up all the Democrat seats that have just been lost in Texas in the state of California. Is that fundamentally fair? Is that even illegal potentially?
Well, you have just touched on a third rail here. I have to take some responsibility for this whole snowball getting started because of a case that I was involved in Galveston, Texas called Petaway versus Galveston. And this case in federal court went to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. And, I was in the room, I worked on the case. And it struck down, or I should say it redefined what this is really super complicated law, so I'm trying to simplify it. A plaintiff cannot sue if they are combining races, Black plus Hispanic, to create a majority-minority district. And this set the whole snowball rolling in Texas because there's a bunch of what these are called coalition districts. They're coalitions between blacks and Hispanics to basically create a Democrat seat. And we won that case for Galveston. Public Interest Legal Foundation was the counsel of record. And we won in the Fifth Circuit, and it completely transformed redistricting law in the Fifth Circuit, which includes Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. And that's why the legislature in Texas decided to get rid of these coalition districts that were no longer protected by the Voting Rights Act because of our case. And that's what set the whole ball rolling. And that's what set the California issue in response. So that's the sort of the history of this. Good luck, California. They're free to do whatever they want. But, as far as Texas goes, they're also free to do whatever they want.
Mm-hmm. I did not know that you were the progenitor of this drama going on in the United States of America. What's your reaction to all of it? I mean, I know that.
Well, I got to tell you, I think back to a phone call I made when Galveston got sued by the left and the Justice Department. And I called another lawyer from Texas I know, and I said, hey, did you see they're alleging a coalition claim in this Galveston case? And he said, yeah. I said, let's kill it. Let's try to find a way to kill coalitions out of this case. Well, it turns out they had already had lawyers, so we weren't even involved in the case for the first year. We came in late and we made the argument that I just described to you, and it became the silver bullet that destroyed the plaintiff's case and transformed the law. But I just think back to that phone call I made, and thank goodness we did this, right?
Wow. Christian Adams, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you spending some time with us, both on the podcast as well as on Seattle Red. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having me, Victoria.